On a crisp autumn morning in 1953, Evelyn Rogers walked briskly down Maple Street, gripping a worn envelope in her hand. Her gray hair was neatly pinned up under a burgundy felt hat, and determination glinted in her blue eyes as she approached the small white house on the corner. Evelyn had spent the last 30 years gathering her courage to finally deliver the letter she had written to Henry Mills in the summer of 1923, before he had shipped off to war and before she had pledged her life to another man out of duty and fear. Now a widow at the age of 65, she knew she was running out of chances to reveal the secret she had carried in her heart for so long. As she walked up to Henry's door, Evelyn's pulse quickened. She took a deep breath and knocked, the old brass knocker cool under her fingers. After a moment, the door creaked open, and she found herself face to face with Henry for the first time in 3 decades. He had aged, of course, his blonde hair now white, his boyish face lined and weathered, but his hazel eyes were the same, still full of kindness and warmth, and Evelyn felt her heart leap at the sight of him. "Evie?" he said in disbelief, a smile spreading across his face. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Henry," she managed, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry to arrive unannounced like this, but I have something I need to give you. Something I should have given you a long time ago." She held out the envelope, Henry's name and old address written on it in her flowy script, the paper soft and faded. Henry took it gently, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What is this?" he asked. "It's a letter I wrote to you in the summer of 23, Evelyn explained. "Right before you left for the war. I meant to give it to you then, but," she sighed, "I was young and scared and foolish. I convinced myself you'd be better off not knowing. So I kept it all these years instead. But I don't want to go to my grave with this unsaid between us. Please, will you read it?" Henry nodded solemnly and stepped back to let her inside. They settled at his kitchen table, the morning light slanting in through the windows. With careful hands, Henry opened the brittle envelope and unfolded the letter. Evelyn watched his expression change as he read, his eyes widening and then filling with tears. When he finally looked up at her, his gaze was tender and full of wonder. "Oh, Evie," he breathed. "All this time, I never knew." "I loved you, Henry," Evelyn said, the words spilling out in a rush. "I loved you so much it frightened me, but I let my fear make my choice for me. I married George because it was safe, because it was expected of me. But my heart has always been yours. I'm so sorry it took me this long to tell you. I just hope you can forgive me." Henry reached across the table and took her hands in his. "There's nothing to forgive," he said gently. "I understand why you did what you did. The truth is, I loved you too, Evie. I still do. Not a day has gone by that I haven't thought of you." Tears streaked down Evelyn's face as 30 years of pent-up emotion poured out of her. Henry rose from his chair and pulled her to her feet, wrapping her in his arms. She clung to him, burying her face in the soft wool of his sweater, breathing in his achingly familiar scent. They held each other for a long time, mourning the years they had lost but marveling at the miraculous second chance they had been given. When they finally pulled back, Henry cupped Evelyn's face in his hands. "We can't change the past," he said softly. "All we can do is make the most of whatever time we have left. I love you, Evelyn. I want to spend the rest of my days with you, if you'll have me." "You're my home, Henry," Evelyn whispered. "You always have been. Of course I'll have you." Over the next weeks and months, Evelyn and Henry made up for lost time. They took long walks through the countryside, leaves crunching under their feet as they talked and laughed. They shared cozy dinners by the fire, poring over old photographs and letters, piecing together the tapestry of each other's lives. They danced to the scratchy records of their youth, swaying in the golden afternoon light of Henry's living room. They planted a garden together in the spring, nurturing the seeds with the same tenderness they showed each other. And every night, they fell asleep in each other's arms, marveling at the depth of a love that had survived so much and burned so bright. Evelyn's heart swelled with joy and gratitude at the beautiful new life she and Henry were building together. After spending so many decades haunted by regret and wondering what if, she finally felt whole and at peace. It was as if the hole George had left in her chest when he died was now being filled up with light and love. But even in her newfound bliss, Evelyn couldn't help worrying that it might be too good to last. She fretted over every ache and pain Henry felt, terrified that she might lose him again just when she had finally found him. Some nights, she would jolt awake in a cold sweat, the old nightmare of Henry dying in the war still fresh in her mind. Henry sensed Evelyn's fears and did his best to soothe them. "We're gonna be all right, Evie," he would murmur, pulling her close. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise. We've wasted too many years already. I plan on spending at least a couple more decades loving you." Evelyn knew he was right. They had been given a precious gift, and she was determined to cherish every moment of it. So she pushed her worries aside and focused instead on savoring the small, perfect joys of their new life together. The feel of Henry's calloused palm against hers, the rumble of his laughter, the glint of mischief in his eyes when he teased her. As the years passed, Evelyn and Henry settled into a comfortable rhythm. They traveled some, visiting old friends and seeing the sights they had always dreamed of. When Evelyn's son and his family came to visit, they welcomed them with open arms, delighting in their grandchildren's antics. Evelyn taught the little ones how to knit and bake her famous apple pie, while Henry spun them tales of his time in the army and carved them tiny wooden toys. Evelyn's heart nearly burst with love as she watched Henry toss their youngest granddaughter up in the air, her gleeful shrieks mingling with his raspy chuckles. They celebrated Henry's 70th birthday with a big party in their garden, fairy lights twinkling in the trees as their friends and loved ones raised glasses of champagne to toast the guest of honor. Henry pulled Evelyn onto the makeshift dance floor, twirling her around as their song, the one they had danced to at the county fair in 1923, crackled through the speakers. They gazed at each other as they swayed, seeing past the wrinkles and white hair to the fresh-faced youngsters they had been when they first fell in love. In that moment, Evelyn knew that everything, every pain, every joy, every lonely year had been worth it, because it had led her here, to Henry's arms, to the deepest love she had ever known. As the party ended and their guests trickled out, Henry and Evelyn stayed on the dance floor, holding each other close as the last notes of their song faded away. Henry pressed his forehead to hers, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for being brave, Evie," he said, "for writing me that letter all those years ago, even though I didn't get to read it, and for finally giving it to me when you did. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for waiting for me," Evelyn whispered back, "for loving me even after all this time. Oh, Henry, we made it. Can you believe it? We finally made it." "We did indeed," Henry said with a smile. He kissed her then, long and sweet, a kiss to make up for all the ones they had missed, a promise of all the ones yet to come. And there, under the twinkling lights with the soft summer breeze ruffling their hair, Evelyn knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. She sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for second chances, for the brave young girl she had been, and for the love that had brought her home at last. That summer was a golden one, filled with laughter and picnics and long afternoons spent reading together in their garden as bees danced between the flowers. At night, Evelyn and Henry sat on the porch, watching the sun set the sky ablaze as they sipped tea and reminisced. Evelyn closed her eyes, committing every detail to memory. The creak of their rocking chairs, the distant chirping of birds, the solid warmth of Henry's hand in hers. She knew, in a way she couldn't explain, that this season would be Henry's last. Though his eyes were still bright and his laugh still booming, he was getting a little thinner, his steps a little slower. Sometimes, she would find him staring off into the distance with misty eyes, as if he were looking at something she couldn't see. "Are you all right, my love?" she would ask softly, taking his hand. He would turn to her with a smile, the lines around his eyes crinkling in that way she adored. "Never better, Evie," he would assure her. "Just thinking about how lucky I am. That's all." They didn't talk much about the future, knowing that theirs would likely be shorter than they would have wished for. But to Evelyn, it no longer mattered. They had now, this perfect, shimmering now, and she was determined to make every moment count. On the last day of summer, they decided to take a picnic down to the creek where they had played as children. They spread out a quilt and feasted on sandwiches and Honeycrisp apples, the sun dappling their skin through the leaves. After their meal, Henry lay back, hands behind his head, gazing up at the cornflower sky. Evelyn curled up next to him, her head on his chest. She closed her eyes, listening to the steady drum of his heartbeat, saying a silent prayer of thanks for each precious thump. "Evie," Henry said softly after a moment, "I want you to know, these past years with you have been the best of my life. I wouldn't trade them for anything." Evelyn lifted her head to look at him, her vision blurring with tears. "Mine too," she managed, her voice choked with emotion. "Oh, Henry, what are we going to do? I can't lose you again." Henry gazed at her tenderly, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "You won't lose me, sweetheart. I'll always be with you no matter what, and we'll see each other again, I promise. Save a dance for me?" Evelyn nodded, a watery laugh escaping her throat as she remembered their long-ago promise to each other. She laid her head back down on Henry's chest, breathing in the comforting scent of him. They lay like that for a long time, shadows lengthening around them as the sun slowly sank. Evelyn knew, in a bittersweet burst of clarity, that this moment would soon become a memory, that all of their beautiful, hard-won happiness would one day be condensed into the pages of a scrapbook or the lines of a eulogy. But their love, she was certain, would live on in the flowers they had planted together, in the stories they had told, in the way the light slanted through the porch at golden hour and made her think of Henry's smile. Their love would go on, just as it always had, spanning years and oceans and the bounds of earthly time. Henry must have sensed the melancholy turn of her thoughts, because he shifted to press a kiss to her forehead. "Don't be sad, Evie," he murmured against her skin. "What we have can never be taken away from us. Even when I'm gone, even when we're both gone, it will still exist. It's too big and bright to ever be snuffed out." Evelyn knew he was right. The love they shared had already survived war and grief and 30 lost years. Could survive this too. No matter what happened, it would remain her constant companion, her guiding star. "What did I do to deserve you, Henry Mills?" she whispered, gazing up into the face she had loved for nearly half a century. Henry's eyes crinkled at the corners as he gave her a crooked grin, the same grin that had first set her 11-year-old heart aflutter all those years ago. "Just lucky, I guess." Evelyn swatted at his chest, smiling through her tears. She knew he was right. There was no deserving in love, no earning it. It came to you when it would, in its own wild and mysterious way. It had come to them that perfect summer when the world was bright with promise. It had found them again in the winter of their lives, giving them the most precious of second chances. And she knew, with bone-deep certainty, that it would find them again, in whatever life came after this one. Their love was a letter sent out into the vast unknown, always seeking its way back home. Evelyn laid back down then, her eyes fluttering closed as Henry's heartbeat lulled her into a peaceful doze. They stayed down by the creek until the sun slipped below the horizon and the stars winked to life overhead, wrapped up in each other and the golden cocoon of their memories. And when it was finally time to go, they walked home hand in hand, the old, well-worn path lit by moonlight and the shining surety of their forever love.